What's up everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is James, and for today's video I just wanted to sit down and talk a little bit about what my strategy was for hunting on a small property. This was the very first year that I've ever hunted on this particular piece of property that was 15 acres. And I just thought I'd share a little bit about what my thought process was going into season and even during season, and kind of a little bit of looking forward to this next year as well. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video and that maybe it's helpful to you guys. And if you like it, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you hit the notification bell before you guys go, and let's just dive on into this video. Like I said in the intro to this was the first year that I hunted on the 15 acres that I would primarily hunted on this year. It was very different because in years past I've always hunted on at least 100 acres to typically even up to as high as 200 acres. So this year, most of my hunting was done on this 15-acre piece. So that in and of itself was a pretty huge adjustment, where I'm used to being able to spread out. You have all this area to go scout out, have a bunch of different stands, have a lot of different things going on, where this year I was really condensed down to this 15 acres. There's only so much you can do with that much property. And that's not to say that small properties are not good or anything, because I had success out there this year, and I honestly had some of my best hunting this year. So I am all for the small properties and stuff, but it is different and presents different challenges. And so going into this year, I honestly, my wife and I, we were living in Oklahoma to start last year. Gosh, I keep saying this year, it's 2022 now, but I'm talking about the 2021 season when I'm saying this year. So at the beginning of 2021, my wife and I were living in Oklahoma. In August we moved back, and I didn't know what I was doing for hunting season until September, and I didn't even get to go over to my cousin's place, who has this 15 acres, until literally the day before bow season started here in Michigan. So I was really behind on the curve this year, but it still all turned out really well. So that kind of gives you a better idea of where I was starting at, because here it was September 30th. I have no stands up. I've never even been on this property before, and I'm about to be going for it. And the first thing that I chose to do was to pick my cousin's brain, just seeing what deer movement he has typically seen around his property. He's an outdoorsman too, but he just hasn't had the amount of time to go hunt his own property. And so that's where the opportunity was there for me. And so I just picked his brain. I'm just like, hey, I know he sees deer all the time. I'm like, where do you typically see him? What are some travel ways that you've noticed them doing? And he was able to point me in a really good direction with that, and even pointed me to where there was a bedding area. And that's something that I would get more into in a little bit with my strategy, but that was really helpful stuff to know, because he lives on the property, so he sees it day in, day out, and constantly would see deer. So I was able to really get some good intel from him. And then the next thing I did is I just walked the entire property. With 15 acres, that is not that big a deal. It doesn't take that much time to walk the entirety of that. And I thought that was just really needed, because I'm not familiar with it at all. I had viewed the area a lot. I had some ideas of where could be good spots, and really based off those, that's pretty much where I ended up having my stand, was one of the areas that I looked at ahead of time. But not having ever been there, you want to just know what you're working with. And so I would, for myself, walking the entire property was great, and getting the lay of the land, figuring out what is what, I think was really good. And while doing that, you're kind of just looking for, okay, what are bedding areas? Is there bedding areas even on this property? Because especially with those small properties, it's not impossible that you're not going to have a bedding area on it, or you're not going to have food sources on it. So it's figuring out what your property has can help you strategize for how you hunt that property. Because I think you really cannot have a one-size-fits-all strategy for any property, because every property is different. And that was something that going in, I was just like, okay, I have to have an open mind of, what is this property going to afford? I went in knowing what the aerial was of the piece and the surrounding properties, and there's a field right next to it, which I thought and assumed would be a good food source. But I didn't know if there was even food sources on the property. And it turned out there's not a whole heck of a lot, but there's still enough to just keep deer there. But that was kind of what I was going in looking at, was, okay, where are some bedding areas? Is there some good transition areas or good terrain changes? Which on this piece, there's really a big patch that's more hardwoods, and then there's a big patch that's more pines. And where I wound up hunting was kind of the edge between the pines and the hardwoods, which ended up being a killer spot. But that's kind of what I had to was looking at, is just those changes in terrain, and obviously just looking for any buck rubs or runways and stuff like that, which that's actually kind of how I found my spot. So the spot that I ended up setting my stand in, it was along the thick patch of pines. So there's no way you really get a tree stand up in there or hunt in that stuff, but it's so thick right there. But I'm just on the edge of where it opens up to a little bit more hardwoods. And then there's actually a little bit thick brushy stuff over to my right hand shoulder. And you're kind of pinched down between the two where you have a natural travel area. And what even kind of led me to this was an area I found on the aerial that I'm like, it seemed like it, in theory it would be good. Boots on the ground, it was even better. And there was just trails everywhere between those two thick areas. It just was a natural funnel, and that was honestly like key. When I found that, I'm like, there's a stand going in this area. Picking a tree is one thing, like you got to figure out the best tree for it, which even the tree I picked, I'm going to be adjusting next year. Again, getting a little ahead of myself. So that funnel area I found, back behind 80 yards was actually the bedding area that my cousin told me about. And these trails are running right to that bedding area and kind of loop around the property. And it's just staying along that thick edge. And it seemed to be, based off what I was finding while boots on the ground, that's the way that most of the deer would work. So immediately I was like, I'm putting a stand up there. I couldn't just run cameras there for a little while and then put a stand. I wanted to have a stand up before season started. So I put one there, and then I just threw some trail cameras out all around the property. And with having those trail cameras all around the property, it was allowing me to still learn the property better, see kind of what's happening on different parts of it and different portions of it. But knowing for this year that I wasn't necessarily going to press that too much. I just wanted to get some intel, get some information. And what kind of was going in my favor is my cousin's always walking around his property. He's always doing stuff outside there. So me running these trail cameras and me setting up the stand last minute, it didn't spook the deer too much because they're so used to human pressure, because just where I was at in the smaller property and stuff. So that honestly was a benefit to me, that my cousin's always doing stuff out there. And yeah, so come hunting season, where my mindset shifts. So that's kind of how I was prepping for season. In season, my strategy was definitely different hunting there than when hunting up north and stuff like I have done, where when I hunt up north, I'm going for a weekend, and you're just going to be picking different tree stands based off the wind. Here I only had the one tree stand set for now. That's going to change in the future, but for now I had the one tree stand set in what I thought was the best part of the property. I still do think it probably is, but I knew that I was going to hunt really sparingly, that I was going to really pick and choose what I thought would be my best days, giving me the best shot out there, because I did not want to overpressure those deer. I didn't want to just hunt it day after day after day. Then the deer just are like, oh, that dude's up in that tree right there. We're going to avoid this spot. We're not going to walk by here. So I didn't want to overpressure. And that was a big thing, that I was just picking what I felt was the best weather days. Of course, keying in on wind direction more than anything. Like I would not hunt on specific winds, because it's like, if I hunt that's where I'm expecting the deer to come from, and that's just going to screw it up. And I don't want to be blowing them out of there or anything. So that's first what I would look at, is the wind direction, and then also keying in on cold fronts. I honestly, like, most times I got out there, I was going with a little cold snap, and it was killer. I mean, it really provided some great hunts. And I didn't honestly hunt over there a whole heck of a lot, but because I hunted it that way, I always had great sits, because I wasn't over pressuring them, and I was picking the right wind directions and the good cold snap days. And I would encourage you guys to do that same thing, especially on a small property, because there's only so much you can do with it. And so if you're able to limit the amount of pressure and save it just for those best days to key in on, I think that's key. And my plan was to really focus in on the end of October to early November, of course, trying for the rut. And unfortunately, just the way things played out with other things going on in my life, that did not fully happen for me. I didn't get out there. I got out there in October, and then I didn't get out there till I think the 12th of November. And the end of October, through like the first week probably of November, I had countless trail camera pictures of bucks cruising right by my stand all times of the day, and including one that I put in one of my other videos that I nicknamed Shocker. He was just a stud 8-point that was at my stand in daylight, and that was really encouraging to see that the deer, like I suspected, were traveling and cruising right along that edge and right by that stand. Unfortunately, I just wasn't there for when they were cruising by there. But going into next year, I'm going to really do my best to just get out there the right time of year. Get out there the end of October, early November, because I could see, based off the intel I got from trail cameras, on all my trail cameras, that's really when I had a lot of bucks on camera. But unfortunately, what can happen with small properties, and what happened to me, is for the rut, I had a lot on there. A lot of bucks just cruising back and forth. But any other time of year, there's only 1 or 2 bucks that actually kind of lived on the property-ish, or were routinely on camera. And so that's something else that I kind of learned was, with it being smaller, you're not going to have as many bucks living on your property all the time. And most of the bucks that I had on camera just were cruising back and forth, and that was like it. They would never be there again. And so keying in on that, the rut time frame could definitely bring in a nice surprise for you. Otherwise, there's probably going to be fewer smaller bucks hanging around all year, which whatever you're hunting for, like, that's up to you, like absolutely up to you. But having the opportunity at the buck that I had seen would be incredible. I didn't end up getting a buck off his property this year. I did end up shooting a doe, which I have a video of, and that was really cool. And it just, man, I'm telling you, I had so many opportunities out there and so many close calls, and I never hunted and didn't see a deer. There's been many times in the past when I've hunted places that I have gone without seeing deer. That's not an uncommon thing by any means, but I was able to see deer every time. And I really do think it's partly because of the strategy that I was implementing of how I hunted the property, the way I would not overpressure it. And it really worked in my favor because I was the only one hunting there. So I had full control over how many guys are out there at once, or when anyone's going to be out there. And that was really helpful to me, I think. But kind of looking forward to the 2022 season, if I'm able to hunt there again, I'm going to get 2 more tree stands up on his property. I'm going to actually tweak the one I have currently set up, because while it was in a really good spot, I found that if I moved it probably 10 to 15 yards straight ahead of where I was, that I would probably get myself more in the game, because a lot of the deer I saw kind of skirted around me, and that happened far too many times. And so I'm like, if I slightly tweak that, I'm in the right area, but now it's picking the perfect tree for it. And now, having hunted there for a year, I have a much better idea of, okay, that's the tree I need to be in. And then there's 2 other spots on the property, and I'm like, if I get a stand there, that would be absolutely perfect. That way I could have different options for different wind directions. And I'm also going to talk to my cousin about doing some like throw and grow food plots, doing some different things to just see if I can even draw more deer to the property. And I think it's worth a shot for sure. But all of the information I learned from this year is really going to help, or from this past year is really going to help me game plan and prepare for the next season better. And that has me really excited. The information learned and knowing the property better, understanding it better, knowing the deer movements on it better is going to be really key for going forward into the next season. But that was a little bit of my strategy and thought process going into this past hunting season. I'm definitely excited to see what the 2022 season will bring and to start all the prep work for that. And I'm excited to take you guys along with me as I do that. But thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe before you guys go. Feel free to leave a comment down below with any of your strategies, your tips for wherever you're hunting, however you're hunting. I would love to hear those. And yeah, catch you guys next week in another video.